ADHD, is there a natural way? We'll talk about that in a minute, but first, a little bit about me. Hi, I'm Dr. Paul Fisher with Fisher Chiropractic. I'm a chiropractor here in Hinsdale, Illinois. That's me on the left at about 8 or 9 years of age, and that's me on the right just a couple years ago. Now, growing up and going through school, I was always a little lax on assignments and a bit of a handful in class, but very good at tests. And year after year, the teachers kept telling my parents that I had ADHD and need to be medicated. Finally, they relented and took me to a doctor who said that no, I didn't have ADHD. I simply needed to get some more exercise, improve my diet, and just really kind of grow out of it and grow up a little bit. After school, continued on to college, then chiropractic school, and finally got my master's in nutrition. Now, I always knew it was a good thing that I didn't get put on medication at such an early age, but it wasn't until going through chiropractic school and getting my master's in nutrition and really understanding the neurobiology and biochemistry involved that I really began to appreciate how much of a benefit it was. And that's why this is such a personal issue for me, and I want to do as much for any kids in this situation as possible. Now, when I was growing up, ADHD was a fairly rare diagnosis. Now, however, the diagnosis has been skyrocketing. Very rarely do I see a parent who doesn't have a kid with ADHD or just simply talk about how many kids are on medications. Now, the diagnosis of ADHD has been skyrocketing, and speaking of medications, so have the prescriptions. Now, in 2009, the last year for which statistics were available, there are 24.3 million prescription and refills for ADHD. And that's not the only psychotropic drug. There are also 6.9 million antidepressants, 6.5 million antipsychotics, 5.2 million antihypertensive, and more. Now, no one knows exactly what the long-term effects on these developing brain and nervous systems are. This is a time where there are more connections being made than there are stars in the known universe. Now, after going through, no one knows exactly what's going to happen, but it's a fairly safe bet it's not going to be anything good. So, where's all this coming from? For anyone who's had experience with ADHD kids, it can probably be best as described that they're driving with no brakes. And as we'll talk a little bit longer with the sensory processing disorders, not only are they driving with no brakes, they're having a really tough time seeing through the windshield too. So what's going on here? Let's take a step back first and just discuss the nervous system, the most important system in the body that controls all the actions. Now, this is going to be a bit of a simplification, but the body has two basic divisions in the nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, and they function kind of like a yin and yang, or just in two opposite ways on all the organs in the body. Now, the sympathetic side is probably best described as the gas pedal. This is what's known as the fight or flight. It's supposed to be used for short times, like when a lion attacks. This is an absolutely essential need, and it needs to be there in reserve. This should not be the dominant system in the body. Now, the balancer of that is the parasympathetic. This is the brake pedal. This allows for the relaxation, digestion, growth, and development. Now, the growth and development is especially important for kids in the developing years. The parasympathetic division should be the dominant system. Now, with children with ADHD or the spectrum disorders, what happened is the nervous system gets out of balance. It's almost as though the body gets stuck with the foot on the gas. Now, how does all this happen? Well, let's talk a little bit about that. The brain relies on stimulation for balance, and the food of the brain is essentially movement. The more movement and input the brain gets that way, the more balanced it out is. And this movement, the vast majority, comes from the spine, 60%, with 33% coming from the neck. This stimulation is what allows the brain to grow and develop properly. Now, when you get a lack of proper movement in the spine, it chokes off the food supply from the brain. That choking is what we call a chiropractic subluxation, and the subluxation is what we adjust. Now, when that Added to a lack of whole body exercise, this completes a very sad picture. Now, the other big stressors are a dysfunctional digestive system. Now, what happens here is that with a diet of overprocessed foods, too much milk and grains, especially given at too young of an age, inflame the digestive system and not allow the food to be properly digested and processed by your body appropriately. This means that even if a child is eating a healthy diet, if that food can't be properly digested, it's not doing them any good. It's not what you put in your mouth that's important, it's what gets into your body. Now, the final major stressor is a dysfunctional immune system. These are kids with multiple ear infections, cold, allergies, and so on. Now, we all know these kids, the ones that are always sick, have runny noses, and the real kicker with these two is that 90% of the immune system is in the digestive tract. Think of this as a relationship when if one person isn't happy, nobody's happy. So many times it's almost impossible to see a dysfunctional digestive system without a somewhat compromised immune system, and with a compromised immune system I can almost guarantee the digestive system will also be compromised. So what do we do? Well, the first thing we do is we begin with a history. We first start talking about pregnancy and birth, how that process went. Was the mother under stress? Then was the birth itself, was it C-section? Was it a breech position? Was it normal? Were any drugs given? Then we start talking about the child, like what metabolic symptoms they have. Do they seem to crash if they miss a meal? Or do they get very agitated? Then we talk about digestive. Do they have a history of colic and lack of bowel movements, or extremely disgusting bowel movements? Then we start talking about the immune system. Were they chronically plagued with runny noses? They have multiple allergies or ear infections so severe that that tubes were mentioned or perhaps even put in. Then the next we go with the physical. We talk about reflexes. This is a way to get into the brain and just really see what's happening with it. Next, we talk about movement patterns. This has to do with gait. It also works with primitive reflexes and just how the body interacts with space. But most importantly, we look at the spine. This is how we see to make sure that the movement information that your body is getting is being properly processed and given to the brain. Then we talk. We discuss what we find and we find out what's best for you and your child. Now, this is one where it's extremely individualized. We find it's different families have different issues, and most importantly, no two children are the same. Now, I want to make this as easy as possible, so we offer a complimentary consultation to discuss what we do at our office and to answer what I'm sure are many questions. Now, when I was young, I got this chance, and I want to make sure that everyone else who wants it gets it also. That's why I'm so passionate about this and believe in it so much. So, thank you very much for your time. And please click the button at the below to request an appointment, or you can also email our office. And don't forget to sign up and get the 5 things not to do when you have a child with ADHD. Thank you and have a nice day.